Welcome to the Superheroes Everyday podcast. I'm Danny Horn. Thank you for joining us. Superheroes Everyday is a comedy blog about the history of superhero movies, starting with Superman the movie in 1978 and telling the story of how superhero blockbusters became the world's most efficient way to painlessly separate money from the public and then give it to entirely the wrong people. On the blog, I'm writing about the movies in release order, but here on the podcast, we'll be covering pivotal moments in superhero movie history. Today, addressing the 2023 Phase 5 faceplant, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Now, down on the quantum realm, time moves either a lot faster or a lot slower. I can't remember which. But either way, it'll probably help that I'm using the Sid Field 3-act structure to break up the episode. So this is Act 1 of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and then I'll be releasing Act 2 and Act 3 of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania later on in the week. And now I want to introduce my guest. Here is, back by popular demand, Ryan Steans of the Signal Watch podcast. Hey, Ryan.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, so good to see you.
Hey, man, I am so excited to be back and talking about this amazing movie.
Signal Watch podcast, lovely movie podcast. I was on it many times over, last summer? When did I take it? I took it over for a while.
We had a good run in there.
How's Signal Watch going?
It's going okay. We've been kind of all over the place lately. We recently covered the movie Jade, which is an erotic thriller starring David Caruso, who no one wants to see and do anything erotic. And then we have done some shark movies. I think we'll do some more like deep sea monster and shark movies. And I was pleased that we finally covered Gremlins 2 recently, which is very much in my wheelhouse.
Fantastic. It is a great podcast and people should check it out. So let's talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. We'll do a little backstory. Here we are in Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is an imaginary thing that Kevin Feige talks about and does not actually make a whole lot of sense. Phases 1 through 3, I could kind of see what they were getting at. They were trying to do the Sid Field 3-act structure. So Phase 1 ended with the Avengers, which was a big turning point. And then Phase 3 started with Civil War, which was another big turning point. But, once they got to the end of Endgame, Phase 4 just kind of bumbled along with random projects that didn't seem to be leading anywhere in particular. The Spider-Man and the Doctor Strange movies and WandaVision all connected up. Everything else was just like introducing random new characters that maybe we'll see again someday. So in Phase 5, it looks like things might be tightening up because now they're developing this big new villain who's going to drive a storyline through the end of Phase 6 and Avengers, the Kang Dynasties. There's a lot of continuity hanging on this movie. And unfortunately, that storyline may be in jeopardy because in late March, about a month after the movie came out, Jonathan Majors was arrested on assault charges. I'm just starting right here. From a domestic dispute. And there are allegations from other women who are reporting that he has abused them. And so Majors is going to court. And as far as I know, so far Disney hasn't made any official statements about what their strategy is. I think they're trying the Ezra Miller strategy of just like, we're just not going to talk about it for a while until it's inevitable that this movie is just coming out and everyone's just okay with it. You have any thoughts on this?
Ezra Miller was the first thing that came to mind, when all of this went down. I mean, at the end of the day, these things are all, you have to have people in them and people get up to business. And I was shocked. Jonathan Majors was an up and coming star in Hollywood, even before the Kang stuff. Mm-hmm. And he'd been considered to be a highlight of the Loki miniseries on Disney Plus. And I was looking forward to having his dynamic presence as this villain. It was I thought, excellent casting for a character I don't know or care about.
Right.
But I was like, well, I care about him. He seems cool. I will be very curious with Iger at the helm of Disney now, if he doesn't say, you guys got to recast or find something new to do.
Well, an amazing thing is they have just released Ant-Man Quantumania on Disney Plus, and that's why we are talking about it today. And all of the promotional material, the trailers and everything that they've produced for this movie on Disney Plus, they've cut all footage of Kang. The official synopsis does not mention him. It just says, Scott and Cassie explore the quantum realm and embark on an adventure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In all the promotional material, Kang is referred to as the new threat that frightens everyone, which is actually a really good description of what's going on at Disney around this.
I mean, I wish them well. I'm a Disney stan, but I am watching everything with a bit of bated breath, not the least of which is this post Endgame Marvel universe that has been herky jerky as a fan, to say
Yeah.
the least.
This Jonathan Majors thing is just a
Yeah.
problem because this is supposed to be the thing that, phase four, like you said, was kind of herky jerky. And phase 5 and 6 now, if they want it to get more focused, the thing that it's focusing on is Kang as the big bad. And it's not even one guy who can be replaced because they specifically set up that this is an entire species of people who specifically all look like Jonathan Majors. So it's not even like you could kill him and replace him with another character. Like the fact that they all look exactly like Jonathan Majors is their entire deal. I mean, they did make a Black Panther movie without Black Panther. So I suppose if Kang has a little sister, then maybe that could work. Like we could bring in Kanga from Winnie the Pooh and kind of make that happen. I would love to see her in the
Just
MCU.
imagine the end of how awesome the Winnie the Pooh ride would be at Disneyland.
Right, where Kanga becomes a conqueror.
Little ruse sticking out of her pouch.
That would be great. That is where we're going. Let's run the numbers because that's really the only important thing. The film made $214 million, which the way that panned out was they had a very good opening weekend of $104 million. And then a second week drop off of 69%, which is the worst of any MCU film. I wasn't even paying attention until second week drop offs until this movie came along. Wakanda Forever had a 63% drop off. Doctor Strange, so this is a thing. Like Doctor Strange had 67%, Thor: Love and Thunder 68%, and then Quantumania 69%. So that's why everyone is talking about superhero fatigue, which is a phenomenon that I think is entirely invented and not real. Because then they release Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is an actual good movie. It had a 48% second week drop, which is excellent. So you just need to make good movies. Like we're not tired of superheroes. We're just tired of like mediocre superheroes. It turns out there are two audiences. I mean, there's more than two, but these are the two that are important right now. There's the opening weekend audience. People who are going to go to every opening weekend like me, just because it's an event and it's fun and I'm into that now. So you got me on opening weekend and all the other people like me. And then the second audience is the rest of the people who wait to hear if it's worth it and see what people say about it. I think you and I may have actually had those kinds of conversations lately of just like, yeah, man, and Quantumania. I know certainly with Trevor, like there are people in my life now that I think about it. There's like multiple people in my life now who are like, so how is it? I'm like, you can wait for streaming or wait until we make a podcast about it.
Right.
The reviews are really where it got hammered. It's got 47% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually tied with Eternals for the worst reviewed MCU movie. So that is where we are. Speaking of the reviews, we're going to have to talk about Jeff Loveness, the screenwriter, because there was a week and a half after the film came out, there was a sad article in Variety. Quantumania writer surprised by terrible reviews. I was in a low spot, he says, and really sad about it, which is amazing. This was one of several people involved with Quantumania Have Feelings articles, which came out after that opening weekend. Jeff Loveness, he worked on Jimmy Kimmel Live for many years, and then he wrote episodes of Rick and Morty. And then they gave him a $200 million blockbuster, which does not really make sense. It was his first film. It was his first thing longer than an episode of Rick and Morty that he ever wrote. So he was not ready for this. What he said in the Variety article was, to be honest, those reviews took me by surprise. Those were not good reviews. And I was like, what the? I'm really proud of what I wrote for Jonathan and Michelle Pfeiffer. I just thought that was good stuff, you know? And so I was just despondent and I was really sad about it. He had feelings. And then he says he went to the movie on opening weekend and he listened and people laughed at the jokes. And his response was, I'm like, God damn, no, they're wrong. I'm right. MODOK is great. Oh, dear. He says, I'm pretty happy with it overall. I think I learned how to take a punch this week. And now that I learned it's not too bad, I can just get on with making things. Oh, Jeff, you are not taking this as the learning opportunity that I was hoping that you would.
Yeah. So I messaged Danny last night after watching the film and said, I think this will be a short one. I don't have much to say. He said, watch this video and you will be full of things to say.
Because yesterday I found an interview with Jeff Loveness, a video from Backstory Magazine, where they did like an hour-long podcast-style interview with him. And I shared it with you. That was posted on March 23rd, and it was a month after the movie came out. So he's been through that journey of that, like, people hated the goddamn movie, and he is so pleased with himself in that interview. So yeah, I sent that to Ryan last night, and now Jeff Loveness is going to be a topic. All right, let's do Act One. Movie opens in a very dark landscape that does not look like anything in particular. It's kind of like there's sand and rocks and kind of a cave. I guess this is a desert that's also kind of a quarry. And there's a lot of sky. And the sky is very decorative. There are these like squiggles and swirls in the sky of like various electric shades of blue and green. It's kind of like ice cream when there's like a ribbon of caramel. And the swirls are surrounding these holes, which might be like wormholes, but if it is, then there's a lot of them. And I don't know what they are. And with everything so dark, it's hard to tell the difference between like what's sky and what's landscape. And just already the movie is challenging. It's been 2 seconds, and just the sky in this movie is challenging.
I find it very interesting that you called this out because, man, same. We got right into it, and my first thought was, oh no, we have to spend 2 hours here
Looking at this,
looking at this because they didn't matter. It was supposed to be confusing in the prior films. It was supposed to be a like it's unknowable and whatever, and you go like, yeah, all I need to remember is it's a colorful swirl. And I was like, oh shit, we're gonna be here for 2 hours.
because they are creating multiple alien landscapes made out of pixels and overtime, and they can't figure out how to do the sky, which does not seem like the kind of problem that a talented visual effects team should have. It's so distracting. And it's really difficult to look at, and I can't believe they made these choices. It's just a bad take, like fundamentally just a bad take on what the whole environment looks like. Well, one problem is that in the quantum realm, there doesn't seem to be a day-night cycle. There's locations where it's always day, and there's locations where it's always night.
Well, there's no sun. There's no sun in the quantum realm. They
Well, then how is it day anywhere?
don't know. They need light sources so we can see the characters. I have not a clue.
I feel like this is a thing that was not, this is a question that was not worked out. What you'd think would be, I mean, in a movie script, right? It's the first thing that you write is night.
You're not wrong.
Scene one, location name, night. And apparently they were just okay with like, it's just always night here. And the places, unfortunately, where we spend the most time are the dark ones. And so that makes me wonder about like, is it just easier to do the effects when you can't really see anything?
The answer is yes.
And that makes me wonder, what is the point of making an effects first movie like this if you're gonna nickel and dime on the effects?
So one of the things that was interesting in the Jeff Loveness interview was he said when he showed up, they already knew they wanted to do a feature within the quantum realm. And right there, I want to know why.
There's a question.
Like, there's nothing inherently interesting about the quantum realm other than it's a way station that they pass through, and it adds an infinite number of problems. They had no real concept of what it looked like at any given point. If it was, and that's the thing that blows me away. I don't know what was going on at Disney or with Marvel at this point. I know they've just let go some of their Marvel execs kind of in the wake of some of these less than stellar.
Oh, is that right?
Victoria Alonso had kind of been promoted, and now she is no longer with the company, and there's a bunch of excuses.
Oh, dear.
But I'm also like looking at the box office going, I think I know why Victoria Alonso is not here anymore.
Yeah.
Because she is the executive producer of this film. I think it was her baby.
Got it. And this was a $200 million film that made 214 million domestic box office. So yeah, we're not going to all this trouble to make $14 million. And so that's why we start out in this. That is so good to know. That makes me feel better just going into this goddamn movie, is knowing the executive producer is out of the door. All right, because here we are in this super not fun place where Michelle Pfeiffer's miserable, and so are we all. And she is Janet Van Dyne. She sees something land somewhere and she grabs her stuff, but it's real dark and everything around is like dark blue with electric blue accents, including the land, the sky, and the monsters who attack her. So you kind of just have to take it on faith. So she shoots some like spider things, and then somebody else shoots one. And then we see little Jonathan Majors, Kang, on the ground just going, what is this place? and that's going to be where we're heading this whole time. Then we're in sitcom world where we are in San Francisco and they are playing the Welcome Back Kotter song. And there's Scott Lang walking down the street doing a cute voiceover that worked real well in the trailer. It was a very good trailer intro. Movie intro? Hard to say.
I don't hate it. I was so distracted by the fact they were using a music cue that would appeal to people my age
Yes. Yeah.
that I was just like, who is this for? Are you making this for people who are 48?
I
Like,
guess so.
and this is my basic beef. Like, I just didn't like this movie. And a huge part of that was this is the part of Ant-Man. I own an Ant-Man helmet.
Yes, you
I
do. I can
own
actually see it behind you.
it is right behind me. I own two Ant-Man action figures. I own an Ant-Man t-shirt. I like Ant-Man. And what I like about Ant-Man is it's an action comedy where he is a man who makes things that are big, small, and things that are small, big.
Uh-huh.
And it's a lot of visual comedy and it's a lot of dynamic stuff happening in a world which has a lot of reference points, which you understand fundamentally,
Mm-hmm.
which this movie then immediately chucks out the window. This part of the movie is way the hell too short. And I would love to know what the hell happened with the writing and editing and their decision here.
Yeah, they are barreling towards it's really just a few scenes, and they're just barreling towards let's just get all these people in the quantum realm as fast as possible, for sure.
Yeah.
The thing that I object to in this part of the movie is that they basically present a world where these characters have no problems at all. Where all these characters who were kind of having a hard time before this and didn't necessarily like each other, there were conflicts between them. They weren't just like these five people were not just a happy family. So it's Scott and his little daughter Cassie, his now, I guess, girlfriend Hope, who's the Wasp. They don't really spend any time on their relationship at all. I don't actually know what their relationship is. And then Hank Pym and Janet, Janet Pym, Janet Van Dyne, who are now apparently like Cassie's grandparents, according to Cassie, even though they're not related, which was hard for me. So they set up this world where like Scott is known and adored by people. Hope is saving the world, doing some businessy thing. And he's written a book, which he reads. Apparently, he reads the entire book to this group of wrapped children in a bookstore. Cassie is being released from jail. This is actually yet another like father-daughter thing where there's a tiny bit of tension. It's kind of like with General Ross and Betty, where there's some kind of tension between them, and yet she is so clearly the perfect daughter who is going out there and doing beautiful things for the world. She was arrested because they were cleaning out a homeless camp, and she comes out of her like half a day in lockup, and Scott's very upset and worried, even though she is clearly fine.
I will start by saying I did not like Cassie as a character in this movie. I thought she was very badly
Tell me
written.
why.
Well, I mean, it doesn't help to me that Cassie is shown to be smarter than Iron Man in passing. Like that doesn't make any sense. The whole tension at the table of, I know you just saved the world and brought back half a universe full of sentient beings,
But we're bored with you.
but we're bored with you. And what have you done lately, Dad? And it's
Yeah.
like, let Dad put his feet up for 5 minutes. And what an ungrateful little brat. Like it just rang completely untrue that there was no truth to anything that was going on. I believe that a passionate young person would get arrested with the cans. Like that whole part of it, I was like, sure, whatever. We're getting who she is. She seems a lot like Hope.
Uh-huh.
The movie also never makes that connection.
Between Cassie and Hope.
Cassie and Hope have no connect. Hope in this movie is the equivalent of Redbird for the Falcon in the movies. Like she just exists to fly around and shoot shit. Like she doesn't have any lines. She just stands around in her form-fitting outfit looking good and has no character arc whatsoever.
No.
And there should be a connection between she and Cassie in this movie because Cassie is set up to be this passionate social crusader, which Hope has turned her entire corporation into.
Right. Do they actually talk to each other at all?
No.
Do they ever address a single sentence to each other?
No one pays attention to the fact that Hope is there, to the point where I wonder if they had to write a copy of the script where she was not there because they weren't sure Evangeline Lilly was going to be in the movie.
This clearly is Ant-Man Quantumania. Like the Wasp is just
Yes.
kind of like sitting there. Yeah, I totally agree. Cassie saying, "What are you doing for the world right now?" Where the answer is like, because the other part of the tension that there is that he wasn't there for some of her life.
Yeah.
That, with the blip, everybody lost 5 years. But he's here now. Like, you would think that the thing that she would want, if that's a problem, that he wasn't there for part of her life, is she just wants him here to be with her. This is a good thing, which he's
Yeah.
currently 100% committed to. Him going off and saving the world again, if that means leaving her, like those, it's just those two. But that's the thing she wants him to do. So those two parts of her apparent motivation right now in that relationship doesn't really work together.
She doesn't have a clear thread, and she's propped up as this like super important day. To me, this movie is the Cassie origin story. Like, we know that we don't have Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly forever, and we need to have an ant person who will be in these films for the next generation. So we can have phase 9 or whatever. This is not a character that I would care to see again by the end of this film.
They head down to the basement. Why are we putting this off? They head down to the basement. We are spending way more time on the beginning of this movie than the beginning of this movie does. They
Oh
head
yeah.
down to the basement workshop because we just got to get everybody trapped in the quantum realm. So Cassie has built this thing that she's excited about, where it's like the Hubble Space Telescope, where we send a signal down and it sends a signal back, which is great, except that's not how telescopes work. Telescopes just wait until the signal comes to
Yeah.
you, and then the telescope looks at that signal. But anyway, so they've been messing around with the quantum realm. They didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell Janet. I don't know what Janet thinks they've been doing down in the basement this whole time. She turns it on, and Janet gets very upset because Janet realizes that if we're communicating with the quantum realm, then bad man down there in the quantum realm might actually do something. And he does, I guess, something. Somehow it starts sucking them all into the machine and down, 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 down into the quantum realm. And there they all go. And then we're just kind of like falling and falling and falling and falling down into the world through, like, this is kind of the part of the multi of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness that I did not like, which is when they sort of squiggle through pointless little multiverse pictures for a minute. That's what we're doing here. So like we go down, it's kind of glass, and then it's kind of tentacles, and then it's kind of coral, and then it's rocks, and then they just land somewhere. And Scott and Cassie land, and they're okay. And they're on a shitty platform somewhere, and it's dark, obviously. And now here we are back. If you wanted to see more of those like gooey smears of like sick looking color in the sky, and then like flares streaming upwards like beams of lava, and a lot of rock platforms hanging there impossibly, and a glowing sun-like orb. Ryan, we wanted to see that, right? That was the thing that we were desperate to
Oh,
see.
when I paid my no money to see this, I was like, give me an orb.
Yeah, give me an orb. So there's an orb. And then Hope and Hank and Janet land, and they're in a different place. They're in like a gooey mushroom floating jellyfish place. Something's scanning the forest, and Janet's very worried about it. And they say, "We need to find Scott and Cassie right now." And that's going to be the movie. We separate these people into two groups and like switch them back and forth a little bit. And the thing that you're going to do for the whole movie is just worry about whoever isn't in your field of vision at the moment. This is Fantastic Voyage. Here we are, semi-normal people, not really normal people, on the verge of all of this discovery. We're going to explore these alien landscapes. My question is, why does this not make either you or I happy? Something that I like, I'm just realizing this now. Something that I like, the thing that I think is worthwhile about superhero movies is showing us stuff we've never seen before. Take me to a strange place, show me weird powers, show me weird visuals that I've never seen before. And I guess now that I'm saying that out loud, I'm realizing the problem is this movie does not actually do that. It does not show me things I've never seen before. It shows me things that I absolutely have seen before in other movies.
Do you mean like you feel it's derivative or from prior Marvel movie?
No, derivative. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a huge Star Warsiness in this movie. To say that there is, a Star Wars influence does not go nearly far enough. There's a desert scene that is just absolutely straight out of Tatooine 100%.
Yeah, it was interesting in that video interview with the writer. He talks about he had just discovered Joseph Campbell, which just made my brain melt.
Did he say that? I didn't
And
even hear that part.
it's in the first 20 minutes. He walks
Oh,
through the points of the Joseph Campbell hero's journey cycle.
oh, he doesn't.
Oh, he does. That's when I think I wrote you at minute 24 of like, I hate my life and I hate this movie and I never want to watch another Marvel movie.
I didn't even watch the first part of that goddamn interview. Oh, I wish I
Yeah.
had. No, that makes me so angry. Because the
And he
hero's journey,
refuses to cite Star Wars. He keeps going back to Lord of the
really,
Rings. Yes.
really,
And I was like, because you don't want to point out that your
that your
movie
movie
is
is
Star
exactly like
Wars.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
What an asshole.
Yeah.
Jesus. Because then Scott and Cassie, like, they are basically saved by Star Wars. Like, there's this sun jellyfish thing that attacks them, and then the space slug kind of attacks them and it's coming for them. And then it's destroyed by these, like, Star Wars Power Rangers, including a robot with a light for a head, who's the one character I kind of like and kind of want as an action figure. And so, therefore, obviously, he's the one that they never made an action figure of. Although also they don't tell us his name. I figured out his name, but I don't know where I wrote it down. It's just there's like a collection of sounds that are his name. They discover that there are quantum people in the quantum realm. One of them is Valkyrie, basically,
Hmm.
from the Thor movies. One of them is kind of like a Jawa guy, a bunch of little guys with glowing rocks for heads. We're not actually going to learn a lot about these guys, which is a goddamn shame because you've got nothing else to do. Why don't we get to know any of these people's names?
The movie just goes, screw you. It's Flashlight Head, the Blob, and the
Yeah.
girl from Mandalorian who will cut all her hair off for that role. It was confusing to say the least. And the decision then to do the whole like goo thing,
Yeah.
which is such a Rick and Morty joke.
Scott and Cassie are kind of we think that they're rescued, but actually they're kind of captured by these like growling Jawas who take them to this like growling village where it's real dark. So then there's the ooze joke, which that's like a Rick and Morty type joke.
Yeah.
Scott is struggling and people are holding him down, and then this horrible monster approaches who has tentacles and his head is kind of like a brain in a jar, and they're all chanting in an alien language. And then they take it looks like a ritual or something, and they're like they bring this junk in a bowl and they open his mouth and they pour it into his mouth, and then it's the babble fish that helps, and now he's going to understand everybody. And it's kind of so is that like it's a cartoony kind of way of establishing that.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever watched Rick and Morty, but it's they kind of jump off from the concept of Back to the Future. They traverse dimensions in time and they get into scrapes, and it's to do lots of things that are kind of dark in a way that a 22-year-old would find very amusing.
Right.
And having him do something that's really gross that he doesn't want to do is something that would happen to Morty over and over and over in the cartoon. It just had kind of that, and it's not. There's nothing wrong with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
just I was like, oh yeah, this guy is a Rick and Morty writer. Like this totally feels like a Rick and Morty gag.
Well, and then the thing that you think is this horrible tentacle monster turns out to be the nice guy. He's got this nice guy voice, and his name is
Hmm.
Veb. And he's like, "Did you drink the ooze?" And like, "Hey, everybody, the ooze worked," and everybody cheers. It's cute. I feel like he is actually a cameo from Monsters University, which I would like. Like, that's actually I love Monsters University, and I wouldn't mind having like some silly monsters around. But he's not in it enough. I feel he's either in it not enough or too much. There's a little funny thing about how many holes you have. It's all cute. And then there's a telepath who's Chi from The Good Place who can read minds, and he has like a momentary funny thing. There's a lot of little funny bits, and and it's nice to have funny people, but like unfortunately, like those people don't appear in the movie. Like Chidi should be there the whole time because he's very funny, but he's in the movie for maybe like twice. There's here and then there's at the end, and that's about it. And then here comes Jintora. Are these names coming as a surprise to you?
Yes, I had no idea these characters had
I had
names.
to look
Not a
them
clue.
up. So here's Jintora, and she's mad because the Conqueror is going to come. All right. So while like Group A, Scott and Cassie are doing this Rick and Morty Monsters University, The Mandalorian crossover, then Janet and Hank and Hope are just straight up Star Wars. They're in a desert that looks just like a Star Wars desert. There's desert people riding desert animals, and there's like floating slug mobiles. It's all about Star Wars. And she has like a fight with this guy, and they laugh and they love each other. And so the joke of a lot of this exploration is that like the rest of the family has no idea where they are or what's going on. But Janet lived down here for 30 years and has a huge history with all these different people. She knows how to do stuff, and she knows a whole bunch of people to talk to. And she's still not telling her family like what that experience was or what's going on. She is letting them discover these things as the audience does.
I don't get this decision at all. Nothing about it makes any logical sense. It doesn't make any character sense.
For her just not to tell people things.
I mean, from book like why she didn't. Now, she's escaped from the quantum realm. Believes she's never going back.
Yeah.
You would think she would sit down with Hank and be like, "Here's what the last 30 years of my life have been like. If we're going to live together."
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't really thought about that as a sort of failure of family life.
It's just a failure of screenwriting. It's entirely ginned up so that we will learn along with the characters. But the problem is you have one of the main characters who is shoved front and center, who is just refusing to divulge information that is crucial for their survival. And it's clear she knows things, and nobody presses her on it. Nobody says, we're not taking another step until you lay out what the problem is.
Right. Oh, yeah, because we're running away from something.
Yeah.
We are running from the unheralded pronouns. Everyone's going to say he and him. He's coming. He's after us. And the obvious question is who?
And why does it matter?
And why does it matter?
What can he do to Ant-Man and his family?
Right. And she doesn't tell us. She's just going to lead us through some Star Wars stuff first.
Yeah.
So they go to a cantina. They walk into a bar, and it's full of aliens, and all the aliens are different from each other. And there's sort of comedy stuff about like, and it's cute. Like, I like this kind of stuff. I love the cantina in Star Wars.
Sure. Yeah.
It's so obviously the cantina, though. So the question is like, does Star Wars actually own the idea of alien worlds that have lots of different kinds of aliens that are arranged in these different like biomes and settings? Is that just Star, or is it okay for another movie to do that without being accused of copying off Star Wars? This, I think, it's what happens when you do something so much better than anyone had ever done it, that even 46 years later, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, it's Star Wars. They're doing Star Wars. So they go into a creepy tunnel, and Janet like manipulates symbols on a wall that opens a door to go to an outside balcony, which doesn't really make sense, but it's even more of a cantina out here. Now this is like the upscale cantina. Every single character looks different, which is part of it. Like it's not creating any kind of what looks like a comprehensible setting, because it's like here's this crowd of people, and literally every single table is a different kind of alien.
Yeah, there's no design cohesiveness to the overall film.
It's hard for me to connect this to what we see of the rest of the world in the quantum realm. There's apparently like a desert and some desert people, and then there's the sort of sad rebels in the dark place. There's Kang's enormous huge city that's just full of robots, I guess, stormtroopers. And then there's this incredibly diverse and varied cantina world that has Bill Murray in it. So this is a friend of Janet's. They build it up for a second of like, oh, okay, Lord Krylar is coming and he's going to help us out. And a spaceship comes, and out comes this VIP who takes off his sunglasses, and it's Bill Murray.
Yeah, and he doesn't in particular have any great lines. There's no like particular Bill Murray-isms.
No.
But we do learn that Michelle Pfeiffer absolutely had sex with this guy.
Yes.
That is why he is there.
And the joke is that like she just had this extra life that Hank doesn't know about, and that she never told him about. So she used to be a freedom fighter, aka possibly a terrorist, and her friend Bill Murray was a freedom fighter with her, but has now sold out. And so now he's a lord in some kind of system that we don't know anything about. We know that he's bad because he orders some hors d'oeuvres that are looking up at him and begging him not to eat them, which is terrible. but it's a very Star Wars joke. So Janet says that they are looking for some friends who are lost in this realm somewhere, and then here come stormtroopers for the first time, who like again, I don't know why Star Wars just owns these concepts, but in comes these faceless, potentially robots who are the big bad soldier henchmen clones.
I was so confused as to what those things were supposed to be. And by the, I guess, the big finale, I'd just given up caring.
Yes.
Are they clones? Are they
Are they
robots?
people or robots? Yeah, it's kind of a big deal, I believe, whether somebody
Yeah.
is.
Did someone choose to side with the whatever he is, the secret bad guy? Like, I want to know these things.
Yeah, that's actually a thing, is that we don't actually get any story behind any
Yeah.
of these things. It's just there. Right.
Right.
And so you would imagine like, and that might be like a thing that Star Wars does, is that they always have a backstory,
Hmm.
like to an incredibly annoying degree. They have a backstory. Everything has a name, everything has a history. But here you just don't have any sense. And that's probably why I keep going back to Star Wars, because like I don't think there's a name for those things. I've been thinking
No.
about them as stormtroopers. And in all my notes, it's just like the stormtroopers, because I don't think they have a name. And how do you have an element of the movie that is as present as these soldier robot henchmen something, and you don't give them a name?
It's indicative of everything that happens that is not between Scott and Cassie in this film. I appreciate that your favorite guy is flashlight guy. I was just laughing and laughing about that character through the whole movie, going, kept looking at my wife and saying, what's his name? What is his name? Who
Yeah,
is he? What's his backstory? Like, this movie doesn't have any idea how to make a movie.
right. He's fun looking. Like I
Yeah.
love looking at. Yeah, it's really frustrating because I really like looking at him.
Yeah. They thought that was plenty. You have a movie that is potentially on the scale of Endgame.
Yeah,
Endgame works because you have spent 20 something movies learning who all of these people are.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's just action figures being hurled at each other.
And they don't even make the action figures. Well, and then there's the scene with like Scott and Cassie. So she's meeting the rebellion and getting to know them. Not really getting to know them, but basically like they say, hey, they don't know anything about our world. And Scott and Cassie are sort of apologizing. And they're like, look, we just want to find our family. And that's it. And then they say, what happened here? And I have no idea what they're referring to. It's like, it looks okay. Like, I don't know what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah, with no frame of reference.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not like they're looking at like the wreckage of clearly a missile tore through this place or anything.
right. No, it's just these people, like, don't they just live here in the dark with little fires? Like, I guess this isn't what it's supposed to look like. But now they say that there's a backstory, which is the Conqueror burned our homes and took our stories, and some escaped, and we find others on the run. And that's it. And as we know later, like, the Conqueror has more than enough troops to just come in and just wipe these people out completely. There's
Hmm.
endless stormtroopers who they can send to do anything they want. But the reason why these people are here is because it gives Scott and Cassie an object for their charity, where Cassie says that we can help. We're white people. There must be
Hmm.
something that we can do. We're rich white people from San Francisco. We must be able to help. And so, these people need help, and why don't we help? And then he mentions Janet's name, and they get all excited about that. There's a fight in the cantina. Hope changes into the Wasp, starts doing Wasp stuff, and they like shoot at stormtroopers, and that's about it. And they get on this real gross ship that Janet can hotwire, and the controls are all organic and jello-y, and Hank has to put his hands in them, and then they fly away. Bad people come, stormtroopers come to start killing folks, the rebellion folks that Scott and Cassie are with. They kind of like usher people into the big living buildings, which sort of stomp around,
I will be honest. I watched this movie less than 24 hours
and
ago,
you
and
can't
this whole
remember.
sequence, it's a
Yeah,
blur. I remember shit happening.
yeah,
I remember there was some sort of like your typical, like, oh, there's the noble rebels or whatever living on the edge of society, and now of course the stormtroopers are showing up. Like, you've seen it in a million movies.
yeah.
What I really remember from that sequence is Cassie leaps head first. It's her first time to fight, and they stop to do this like cute Cassie has to learn how to fight in the middle of all of
A
this,
fight, right?
which
It's a cute, but they do a cute
it's
thing.
a
The
cute bit. It's
the
a
jump
cute
the
bit.
jump and tap bit is
Mhm.
is is very cute.
What I didn't like in the sequence is they keep taking their helmets off. Marvel has this thing of clothing doesn't it's meaningless in the Marvel universe. It's helmets appear, they disappear. It's something that we've been seeing for 10 years now in the movies. It doesn't make any sense with the Ant-Man characters, but it makes even less sense because between punches, Cassie's taking her helmet off.
Something that is weird to me is the suits just like get activated and deactivated with no apparent movement on the part of the person. Like you don't tap your shoulder and the helmet comes up or something. It just comes up. And my big question about the sequence is Scott can get really, really big and it would help. There are a lot of moments in this movie where it would help if you could suddenly get really, really big and just like stomp on shit. And that does not appear to occur to him at all until the very end when it's sort of the animal at the end of the Muppet movie. Here is Janet and Hope and Hank, and they are flying through more dark stuff. And she is saying, I am protecting you by not telling you. And they say, from what? And so finally, after 49 minutes, Janet finally says, I'm going to tell you about the unheralded pronoun. I'm going to tell you who he is. And with the fateful decision to finally clue in the audience about what the fuck is going on in this movie, that is the end of Act 1 of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I will be releasing Act 2 of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania later on this week. And here's what's coming up. There's a small energy core within this large energy core, and he needs the small energy core so that it will collapse the large energy core into the energy core.
Is that what was happening?
That is what's happening.
And I felt bad for Michelle Pfeiffer because they go to these screenings. She's got to just be like, well, not everything can be Batman Returns.
It really, like, he doesn't have the car. He doesn't have the time and space ship. I don't know where he gets weapons and technology that are centuries beyond anything of anything. He has a costume.
Why am I like a full, like almost hour into this movie and just now being told the basics of what I saw in the trailer?
Oh yeah, well now I can't enjoy that movie either, huh? Weird. That's what this podcast is about squashing joy wherever I find it. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
These act breaks, they come up on you sometimes. I will meet you right back here for Act 2 of Quantumania on the Superheroes Everyday podcast. Thanks for listening.
Drink the ooze, drink the ooze, drink the ooze, drink the ooze.
Hello.
Well,
Hi. Hi. Did you drink the ooze?